And they are, as Denise is entering them, she is actually marking them with the correct AM PM designation, but somehow they're displaying. We even tried marking it with an AM designation to see if it would display the opposite way, but we are aware that the and we're working, that's a known issue for us, so we're working on making sure that that time is correctly reflected in the minutes.
We don't want to leave the perception that we're getting up extraordinarily early meetings.
Is there any reason I could then we should put it in our minutes, you know, written out while it's, or does it not matter?
So these minutes are actually as they are presented on the web page. So they are in the minute in the actual minutes as 5:04 p.m. They're just displaying this way on the web page as 5:04, and that will be corrected as time goes on.
Did anyone have any comments about the draft meeting minutes? Or the executive session minutes?
I would move approval of both sets of minutes.
And I second that. This is Katie.
That was Terry.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Minutes are adopted. Next, we come to the approval of expenditures and the approval of the February warrant checks. The approval of January prepaid checks 69699 to 69700 and 69708 to 69709, totaling $859.50. And the approval of the February warrants 69710 to 69788, totaling $163,869.79. Does anybody have any questions about these outlays?
And just to point out some unusual things that you may see here is under Southern Adirondack Library System, you'll see that's a fairly large check that month because we've had some issues with back and forth in the delivery of invoices. So this is actually for 4 months of invoices rather than 1 month of invoice to catch us up. So that's why that number is large.
I know I should know this, like, what's the HRA reimbursements?
And that is another thing for which we were in arrears. So those are retirees who are eligible for our Medicare Advantage plan, but who opt not to be on the Medicare Advantage plan. So, so it's a payment up to what we would contribute toward their Medicare Advantage plan. For just a handful, there are 3 or 4 employees who do not participate in the insurance, but are eligible for it. And again, this is a catch up of some arrears. And those are primarily people who are eligible, who live out of state, where our plans wouldn't provide the best coverage for them.
If nobody has any questions about the expenditures, I move that we approve the expenditures for the January prepaid checks and the February warrant checks as reflected in the agenda.
I second. Janet.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Those are approved. And then we move on to the financial reports. We include the prepaids and the warrant summary sheet we just approved, and the budget report and the income report.
And I think that apart from those items that we just discussed, there's nothing unusual about these unless Eric has anything he wishes to point out.
Nothing unusual.
Move approval. This is Terry.
I second that. This is Katie.
Okay, there's a motion to approve the monthly income report and the budget report and the January prepays and February warrant summary sheet. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next up is the president's report. I have nothing specific to report. Do we have any public comment?
No, we do not.
Correspondence and communication?
None to report.
Then we're up to Mr. Pulver's report.
All right, and some of this may cover some things that we'll talk about in old business and new business, but just to give you an update, as we were preparing the annual report for submission, it's quite a lengthy process. It covers a mixture of periods like the previous fiscal year, the previous calendar year, trying to recreate a little bit of what we've experienced over the last year and a half or so. We've kind of been through the ringer here. I just wanted to share a little bit. I'm going to share, as we were trying to recreate the number of, one of the questions they ask is related to COVID, the number of weeks that we were closed in the reporting period. And for the purposes of the report, closed means, if we were open for our grab and go, our version of curbside pickup, that doesn't actually count as being open for service. So for an entire quarter of the reporting year, from July to June, July 2020 to June 2021, we were closed to the public for 12 of those weeks. And this just gives you a little bit of a snapshot of what we experienced through our various stages of opening. So we were opened for people to come and pick up their things that we had pre-checked out for them. We had limited browsing for a while in new and popular. We did quite a bit of rearranging. We were forced to close down again in the winter last year because of an uptick in the community and a number of cases on staff. Then we opened again in various stages. So maybe it's like out of sight, out of mind. We're in a much better place now than we were a year ago. It is really just kind of a testament to the staff and to the community for the continued support, and the staff for keeping us going through. Really, it has been quite a traumatic experience that we've all experienced, and just keeping up with every new phase of opening, closing, expanding, contracting. I think we're in a pretty good state where we are now, and back to being open our full hours, not back to our full capacity, but getting close to it. We're open for all of our hours. We're reinstating more of our services, but expanding cautiously, as we are still, when we look at the infection numbers and the positivity rate, we are now where we are in the community, where we were a year ago when we were closing things down. The situation is much different now, but we really have been through a lot over the last little bit. The thing that is causing the most confusion, there are two things now, because as we move forward through the pandemic, there are all of these nuances and a variety of ways of looking at things that we didn't have a year ago. So the biggest thing is, of course, the masking requirement. We still have a masking requirement in place in the library, and our feeling is that we want to maintain that until the numbers or the guidance from the CDC changes. Right now, we've been following the guidance from the CDC throughout the course of the pandemic. Then layered on top of that, guidance from the CDC have been a variety of executive orders and governmental mandates that have been in addition to the guidance from the CDC. Those have come and gone, have been put in place, have been challenged, have been removed or allowed to expire. But what hasn't changed is the guidance from the CDC, which says that as far as community spread of the virus, we're still in a much worse place than we were a year ago. But then the other variables are the vaccination rate, which is much higher now than it was a year ago. So it's not forcing us to close, but it is encouraging us to maintain many of the safety protocols that we have in place. So there's the masking thing, which our desire is to continue to follow that guidance from the CDC. The other guidance from the CDC that is causing some confusion is that there used to be fairly, before there was widespread adoption of the vaccine, a fairly straightforward protocol for if you were exposed or if a family member was exposed. Now people are divided up into 5 different categories of people and an action that you should take if there's an exposure or a positive test is different for each one of these 5 different groups of people. So it just takes a little bit of effort to interpret all of these nuances. We're still following that guidance, but that guidance continues to be a little bit at odds between the federal and the state, the same way that it is with the masking. So the state has adopted most of the federal guidelines for isolating and quarantining following a positive test or an exposure. But what is at odds with that is, so the guidance about quarantining and isolation is the same. The guidance about what's required for us to pay in terms of sick leave is not in line necessarily with what the guidance would be for the isolation or the quarantine. So there's a little bit of, and I know this sounds confusing because it is confusing. It is confusing. So there's some a lot more interpretation that needs to go into things these days in those terms. But that's kind of a long-winded way of saying we've been through a lot. There's definite progress. We're in a much better place today than we were a year ago, and we see some hope on the horizon as far as long as things continue to improve. We feel like we're in a good place to continue on our path toward expanding services. We're back up to our full open hours for most of our places within the building. Now layering the services on top of the open hours and expanding those, we feel we're in a good place to carry on with that as long as things continue on this trajectory that we're on.
Ike, do you have any sense of how our neighborhood libraries are faring?
I think most libraries are, especially libraries that are in a similar class to ours in size, libraries in Sal's, Clifton Park, and Crandall are our closest peer libraries. They're in a similar situation to us where especially, everybody is continuing to open. There does seem to be a continuum in terms of openness. Clifton Park might be a little bit ahead of us. We're a little bit ahead of Crandall just in terms of going full speed ahead with programming, indoor activities, meeting rooms, et cetera. But we're all pretty close, and we all do seem to be aligned as far as the masking requirement. The outlier at this point in the region seems to be the Schenectady County Public Library, with which we have a relationship for sharing materials, but is not part of Sal's. They're a department of the County of Schenectady, and the County of Schenectady has gone to a voluntary masking situation for people who are vaccinated. So they're at this point the outlier among libraries in the region. But otherwise, we are all seem to be pretty close to on the same page.
So nobody's asking for proof of vaccination or anything like that?
No, nobody's doing that. Nobody's gone that far. No. And interestingly, the County of Schenectady was they were much more stringent about vaccine requirements and mask requirements, et cetera, in the earlier stages of this. So it's interesting that now that there seem to be a step ahead of us when it comes to the masking situation.
So, and are you able to iron out the inconsistencies you're finding with the sick leave policy, or is it just something you anticipate?
It's something we anticipate. I don't know, Kelly, if you have anything to say about it. I mean, what we're finding is that, maybe unlike a little bit earlier, we are looking, everything has to be evaluated like literally on a case-by-case basis. So,
Yeah, every case, exactly that. We sort of evaluate it as it comes in. The only, I think, big change that is kind of, I'm not a huge fan of now is before you, if somebody went out with COVID, they would get a letter from the Department of Health for their, their isolation order. And now they don't do that anymore. So now they have to fill out like a self-attestation form, which is, I prefer a letter from the Department of Health, but that's not what they want to do anymore. So,
right.
So yeah, case by case basis for pretty much everybody so far.
Right.
And it hasn't been that difficult, really. I don't think so.
Yeah, no, I think it's been pretty good. And we've not been unaffected. I would say since sort of the beginning of the Delta wave, followed by the Omicron wave, we have not gone unscathed. We've had about 10% of our staff have needed to use COVID sick leave, either for themselves or for because they were exposed, or to either exposure somewhere. As best as we can tell, the exposures haven't happened in the workplace, but it's hard at this point to know exactly where those have happened. But people have either had people in their household or personally tested positive, about 10%, actually a little bit more than 10% of the total staff.
And how's the staff holding up?
I would say people are tired. Definitely, it may sound a little bit melodramatic, but it is a traumatic experience that we've all just had. And I think, I think staff are holding up remarkably well, considering that, the longer this goes on, just like with the rest of society, right, it becomes more challenging. And then with inconsistencies with advice from health officials and governmental entities, when that advice is at odds and we're kind of left in the middle to follow the best guidance that we can, we get more challenges. So so staff are facing an increasing number of challenges to our masking requirement, and the challenges are becoming more vehement, I would guess is the right word to say. The good news is that the challenge, the people who are challenging to our requirement at this point are far and away, they're in a minority. So it is rare compared to the total number of people that we get in the building that we get somebody who is unable or unwilling to comply with our policies, which, the reverse of that is so that what happens is that when it happens now, those cases become magnified because they're so rare, they really stand out.
And at this point, there isn't paid COVID leave or sick time through the government anymore, right? So staff are just relying on their own sick leave that they have.
No, there's still a New York COVID sick leave. So,
Okay.
and and that, and that's where it gets a little bit nuanced, because the isolation guidance now for people who have tested positive, it used to be 14 days, and then it got shortened to 10 days. Now it's shortened to 5 days. So that's happened, but the COVID sick leave requirement for us is for a 10-day period from a positive test or the onset of symptoms. So that's where there's a little bit of an inconsistency, and it only applies for people who are not able to work from home. So we have had people who are required to isolate or quarantine but are able to work from home, then they're not entitled to the COVID sick pay. But if they're sick enough to not be able to work, or there's no work for them to do from home, then we are required to pay them up for any hours they would have been scheduled in that 10-day period.
And are you relying on is the county, in this relationship we've had with the school district in the past, and looking at what they're doing with things like mask guidelines, or
Right.
is the county are you on the list that the county is then connecting with you about how to handle this, or?
So the information from the county has never been super great. So we are still on lists from the state and the CDC for getting information. And we're definitely keeping aware of what the school district is doing in terms of, because the school district has the executive order that was just allowed to expire from the governor did not expire for schools and healthcare. So we're sort of we're neither one of those things. We're a school district library. So there's not a mandate for us to have the requirement, but there's nothing that says that we're not allowed to have the requirement. And I think that's where it gets a little bit confusing for members of the public, that to understand first that the mandate was not a mandate for individuals. It was a mandate for businesses, schools, libraries, for institutions to have a mandate. So it was a mandate for the institution and not have a requirement for people entering those places, rather than a mandate for individuals. So that's, part A of the confusion. And then part B of the confusion is that, when it's in place or when it's expired, there's nothing there, for the general public. They don't necessarily understand that simply because there's not a mandate doesn't mean that these places now that are not mandated to do it are, can't have their own individual institutional policies.
Right. So that would be my sense, is that there are lots of businesses and things that still put signs on their door saying that this is
Absolutely.
what they want, regardless. Do you have it posted on the website? I don't remember seeing it.
We do.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's something recent on the website after Hochul's order or saying or taking away the mandate.
You know what,
I know you had something in January, but I'm wonder if there was something more timely.
No, there hasn't, and we can definitely do that. In fact, I meant to do that, to say that our requirement is independent of the executive order. It was in place before. It continues to be, because it's based on this guidance from this.
Because there's
Yeah.
I think there's, like you said, there's this confusion in the
Right.
public to think you guys, that the library should not have it anymore.
Right.
And I don't know if at some point that's something you want then us as a board to approve or something. So it's not also just on the shoulders of the staff.
Right. Yeah, I think that would be helpful. And it has been approved as part of but all of this is so, it's been going on for so long now, it seems that those approvals may be lost to memory, right? So no, I definitely appreciate that. So, but I think you're right, Frank, that, and it was definitely on my agenda for this week to update what's on the webpage, to say that in light of the continuing, the ongoing advice from the CDC. And the CDC is very specific, and explicit, and the wording is even everyone in Saratoga County should wear a mask while in indoor public places. So it's, it's at that level of specificity.
Yeah,
Of course, it says that about everybody in Washington County, everybody in Warren County, but it is at the county level and explicitly says.
And I think this is within what we've said before, but I think you could, as Katie said, if you want to put the board in, work the board into that as well.
Right.
If you want, it's up to you, but
Yeah.
if you feel that would take some of the pressure off
Right.
you.
I would just want to add assurance that board members can certainly empathize with what you and the staff have been going through. I mean, we're obviously at a distance from the frontline decision making, but you've been doing a very good job in keeping us updated, and while maintaining clarity, also adequately conveying the confusions
Right.
that you've been facing. And I think you and the staff have been doing a great job, and it's much appreciated.
Well, yeah, thank you. And I appreciate that. And really it's the brunt of this enforcement and the explanation, et cetera, falls on to the frontline staff, who really are doing a terrific job at it.
Well, maybe we want the CDC county guidelines in a big color with a color chart when everybody walks in, so they realize that it isn't just you being the big bad wolf.
Well, exactly. And we're not making decisions in a vacuum. Right.
Right.
So. Alrighty.
Are there any other questions about that? Mike, what were you going to do next?
So next, I just wanted to give you an HR update, which is totally related to what we've just been talking about, because we have expanded, as I mentioned, to our full open hours, our full 70 hours a week open, with the notion, especially with the Omicron surge, those two things coincided. And so it was a little bit nervous making that, are we sure that we want to have this expansion just when, people are, there's this increase in positivity. Again, we have been able to weather it pretty well. And again, it's not have been without some finagling, and the staffing margins have been very thin. So our plan, because we didn't want to go back to a place where we had to shut down again, like the 12 weeks that we were closed in the prior year. So we did set a minimum staffing level. We have been able to maintain that, but we have had some challenges. So that's just by way of letting you know that, and I wanted to thank, but they're both here on the call, Kelly and Rick, who have been interviewing everybody under the sun to fill these positions, particularly the ones that are important to get the people count in the building monitors and the cleaners, who are kind of integral to our safety. Getting those folks on board has been a challenge. And so I just wanted to express my appreciation for that. So that was that. And then the state report, you'll see a little bit later. I'm sorry it came to you late, as always. It's a little bit, not a little bit, it's very confusing. It's a lot of data and it's very confusing. Part of the issue with the state report is that we are never quite sure what kinds of questions they're going to ask us until they ask them. And so then we're going back a year trying to recreate or mine the data to see if we have the data to respond to the kinds of questions that they're asking, which is, as you can imagine, a little bit of a challenge. And then the other challenge is that some of the questions are asked on for a fiscal year, some on a calendar year. And so juggling those is a little bit of a challenge. But I don't even know if you've had a chance to look at it yet. So a lot of the data that we're reporting is reporting back to Sal's information that they reported us. So one thing that you may notice going forward in future, so this year they've asked us questions about synchronous and asynchronous programs. So synchronous programs being those that happen in real time, live, whether they happen live in person or live in a format like this. So they're asking us to keep statistics about that. And then they're asking us to, which are fairly easy to accommodate, since those are the kinds of statistics that we're used to keeping. Then they've asked us to keep synchronous statistics about asynchronous programs, which are things that we might record and then post to YouTube. And they want us to report the number of people who've watched those programs within the first 5 days after they've been posted. So what we would normally keep is how many of those things we posted, and then we would be able to get a report for how many people watched them, but we have no way to narrow down to that window of the first 5 days, especially a year after the fact. So if we had known that they were going to ask this question a year ago, we could have gone back, on a 5-day schedule and checked to see. So what we're reporting, so that just so that you know that what we're going to ask you to approve is what we put in this form, but we're reporting everything with a note that says we have no way of knowing how many of these happened in the first 5 days. But we're fairly certain that the most popular time for people to watch them is when they're newly posted. There is an occasional outlier, an anomaly. One of Sarah Durbin's story time, which we might expect to be in the hundreds of views, is over 8,000 views. And we've learned that that's been adopted by some elementary schools and other parts of the world. And so we're actually not reporting those as things that happened within the first 5 days, because we know there's a little bit of a viral element to that. So we've excluded that from our statistics. But just so you know that some of these statistics are estimates.
Well, it's odd to me that they would ask for that information without giving you notice that they were going to be seeking that information.
Yes, I would say it's odd, but it's not unusual for us to get a whole new question that we didn't, a year after the fact that we didn't anticipate the year before.
Are we trying to keep track of that going forward then?
We are, yes. And then the other thing that so we are able to report some of our statistics that they're asking for on the fiscal year. And it makes sense for us to be reporting on the year that's on the budget year, as transactions, as well as patron transactions, as well as the financial things. But what we've reported, just so that you're aware, that there's a distinction for things like the holdings questions that they ask, the number of items that we have in our collection, and then the circulation transactions that happened during that period are reported on the calendar year, since that's how the data was provided to us from the library system to report back. And then just a reminder that we do have our budget vote and trustee election coming up. Petitions for trustee candidates are available now. They are due back. Actually, I don't have it here in the. Do I have it here in my report? I don't, but they're due back in fairly short order. The budget vote.
I have Tuesday, March 8th.
There you go. That's when they're due back, which is at least 30 days prior to the election, which is a little bit earlier this year than in prior years, because we traditionally do it on the Thursday of National Library Week. That's moved up to be a week earlier than it previously has. I suspect it has to do with the timing of the Easter and Passover holidays, that they've changed this. I think next year it's at a later date even, but just so that we're aware that There is a little bit of a difference in the schedule for this year than has been our tradition, in that there will be the budget hearing, which we're planning to do live in person here in the library on the Monday before the regular monthly board meeting. What has usually happened is that regular monthly board meeting and the budget hearing happened on the same day. This year, just because of the timing of the budget, had to stick with our regular schedule for board meetings. Those two things happen a week apart. So that's my report, unless there are other questions.
Thank you, Ike.
You're welcome.
Okay, we're into department reports. Jennifer Ferris. Is she here?
Good evening. I realized with this picture that I had that I didn't say what year that was from, so that was last year. I was working on the New York State annual report and I made that. I was like, that's going in, so I have something. And the audiobook and book titles are in the order that they're shown as an adult title, a children's title, and a teen title. So I'd grab the top one that's circulated there. And the movies and TV shows are from Hoopla and Canopy. And the magazines are from, I believe it was in March, we started having like 3,500 magazine titles in Overdrive. And those are the top circulating ones, which makes sense. That's what that image was. This week I started training staff on how to finalize cards that patrons create themselves using our online catalog. And that will go live for new library card users on February 23rd. And they'll be able to go on our online catalog and fill out a form.
That's great. And you're doing another repair cafe.
Yes, we're gonna do it in the library in person. Very socially distanced and just the same as last time when we were at the Saratoga Recreation Center. It'll be appointment only, so it'll be as controlled as we can make it, rather than an onslaught of people coming in with stuff to be repaired. That's all I have.
And the Sal's annual report party.
Yes, that's what they call it. There was trivia, there was naughty trivia and everything.
And really what that was getting the people from the various libraries together to kind of go through the data that they needed to be collecting. So they try to make it fun, but there's really no way to make that stuff fun.
Except if you call it a party. Thank you, John. Catherine, is there anything you'd like to highlight?
A couple things. So you can tell from the picture that the snow does not stop us. So if there is a way for us to do something outside, we find it. So we just keep getting out there. One of the things that I think is buried in the middle somewhere is I'm really pleased with the amount of computer usage that we're having down here. We opened every other terminal and we're definitely seeing people coming in using it, sometimes the same people coming in every week. So it makes me really happy that we're providing that service again. And there's another outdoor program tomorrow morning at Creekside. So. Oh, and I didn't write this down, but we did get some new fish. If you haven't been down here lately, there's some little stripy fish in the fish tank, so you can come say hi. They're very small, but they'll get bigger.
Excellent. Does anyone have any questions for Catherine? If not, thank you. Okay. Is Jennifer Ogrodowski here?
Yes, I am here. Hello. First, I'm going to steal Catherine's graphic. I love the mosaic tile look. Going for that next month. A couple things I just wanted to highlight. We had a wonderful MLK program with Create Community Studios, MLK Saratoga, called Lost Roundout, a story of urban removal, which tied in really well with the grant program that we've had over the last year and talking about urban renewal on the west side of Saratoga. So we had a panel discussion with the presenters and watched the film. Unfortunately, we did have to go virtual, but knock on whatever, the technology works. So we were really grateful for that. Computer appointments have started again. So we've been doing one-on-one. Both Caitlin and Kate have started doing those, and Trevor is also doing one-on-one technology help. So people seem to be really grateful and looking for that service. We are anticipating starting our computer classes with limited attendance again, starting in late March, seeing how that goes, and then hopefully continuing to add to that as well. Kelly was able to have her drumming program with Saratoga Bridges finally, and that's something she also got a grant for, but it had to be postponed because of the pandemic, so that was great. And I wanted to point out Lori's hard work. Even though she's gone part-time, she's still really been involved with the Brookside History Museum and their exhibit for Black History Month, which is open now, and she's just done a phenomenal job, and so I really just wanted to applaud her for that. On that note, brown bag lunches are going to start resuming again in April. We know that was a really popular program that had to be on hiatus for a while. So Karen from the Visitor Center and I have been talking, and so we plan on that starting again in April, and speakers to be announced soon. And two more things and then I'll stop. But there's a lot going on in January. We now have the New York State tax forms as of today. So they are out in the lobby in the Putnam Street vestibule. So just so you know, if you have friends, spread the word. We now have them. And on that note, Trevor's been doing a great job coordinating that. And today he had his first UPH author stage program, which is something where he's begun to interview local authors, have a similar series of questions, but just to kind of highlight some of the creativity in our community and give them a chance to talk about their work. And I believe he started it off today with Philip Ratzer, who is our wonderful Mary Ratzer's husband and author. So he's got several more slated for the agenda, and we're looking forward to that. So that's it in a nutshell for the highlights. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Or try, anyway.
I was going to ask you about this, it's a new volunteer recruitment?
Yeah, it's been going well.
For greeters?
For greeters, yeah. We put a shout out into our newsletter and got some really positive responses from that. We've also had some people from the book bag shop respond positively and join us. And I think we just got one more maybe a week ago who came, they sent an email to say they were interested. So that's going well.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Rick?
Good evening.
Good evening.
Mostly January was more like a survival month for us. Between that ice storm and a few other things, short staffing, and I expect to have this quote on the exterior lights for Henry Street this coming week. People were nervous about what was underneath the concrete inside the bushes. And I said, really just give us a basic quote. If we run into anything major that's outside the normal, we'll work it out. Other than that, we're moving forward. Any
Right,
questions?
great. I think this is the shortest report I've ever seen you write, Rick.
Oh, I can get shorter.
But and part of that, I have to say, I just wanted to like publicly acknowledge all of the extra work that Rick is doing because of the short staffed. I mean, he's been stepping in and doing a lot of frontline stuff. And for the last week or two, it's been chipping away endlessly at the ice that we got in that last big ice storm, which left several inches across the parking lot and every exposed surface. So thank you, Rick, and the whole department for that.
Yeah, the operations staff did a great job. I mean, it was an exceptionally tough storm. You do what you can. I mean, we could have dumped thousands and thousands of dollars of salt on it, but it doesn't stop it. You got to get it off. So
That was, I thought, very unusual, because it was like a Napoleon. There were layers of ice and snow and ice. It was very difficult to get rid of.
and down here, people walk on it a lot on the sidewalks and the ramps. And
Further
that just
compacted.
makes it more compact.
Yeah. All right, thanks, Rick. Kelly?
So it's been a very busy month trying to find people to hire. Particularly, it's been very difficult finding cleaners. We were successful in finding 2 building monitors, which you can see the request to appoint there. Cleaners, it's been a different story. We've had people apply. I've scheduled a number of interviews and nobody has shown up. So it's quite frustrating for all involved. Right now I have nobody in the pipeline. I've refreshed all the ads everywhere, so hopefully we get something this week. But that's where we stand there. Let's see, we have some policy stuff to talk about. During not last payroll, the one before, is that right, Ike? The one before, we came across some confusing wording in the handbook. You can see what Ike has and I have worked on here. I'm sure there'll be questions about that as well.
All right, well, so you have a request to appoint
Mhm.
Kevin Martin as a building monitor,
Yes,
part-time. A request to appoint Lisa Butler as a building monitor, part-time,
mhm,
and a request to appoint Amy Hughes, librarian, 1,
yes.
part-time. I move that we appoint those 3 individuals.
Second that, this is Katie.
Any discussion? All in favor?
I,
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, those 3 appointments are approved. I'm sorry, Kelly, that what were you? I'm sorry, I interrupted your train.
Oh, that's okay. There's the whole section there about the sort of policy change that we need to, I guess, consider. During not this past payroll, but the one before, we sort of came across an issue with some of the wording in the handbook that was confusing, that we kind of want to clarify in regards to the holiday pay.
Was it a question of whether they got holiday pay or premium pay or
So
overtime pay versus premium pay?
basically, it was kind of confusing. The wording in the handbook was everybody had previously been paid essentially double time and a half. So they would get paid, this is for non-exempt. They would get paid 7 hours for the actual holiday. And then they would get paid time and a half for whatever hours they actually worked on the holiday. But the wording in the handbook it's not very clear because it's in 3 different sections and they don't all kind of go together, if that makes sense.
And it's a policy, it's a situation that applies to a very limited number of people on a very limited number of occasions. So it's
Right.
full-time, non-exempt
Non-exempt, yeah.
people. So so we have one policy for all full-time people who that are eligible. So all full-time people are eligible for holiday pay, whether they're exempt or non-exempt. And then there's another rule for
Whether they're working or not working.
whether they're working or not working.
Right.
Correct. Yep. And then there is another rule that anybody, whether they're full-time or part-time, who is non-exempt, is eligible for overtime for any hours that they work on a holiday. And so what was unclear was it a situation of the full-time non-exempt people who work on a holiday who are entitled to the holiday pay? Do they in addition get the overtime pay for hours that they work? And our practice has been that yes, they do, because it may not be a full day that they work. They may work for a limited number of hours on a holiday. So they would be entitled for their holiday pay plus a premium pay rate for the hours that they work. Or even if they don't work, we have to pay somebody else in their place at overtime or a premium rate of pay to work those hours. So our practice has been to work these two things in tandem,
Right.
but there was a real lack of clarity about that in the handbook. It could be read in different ways, that it was one or the other rather than it was one and the other.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions about that? So this is to clarify that they will get holiday play plus time and a half for the hours that they actually work.
Correct. Yep.
Would you like us to approve this now?
Yeah, I mean, it's you can either do it now or it's in new business. I don't know if it makes a difference where it happens, but yes, the request is there.
Does anybody have any questions about it? I mean, I'm would move to approve this change.
Yeah, I second. It makes
Any
it
discuss-
consistent, so I think it's important.
Okay, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries.
And it's really amazing how much of a difference these 10 words,
Yeah,
how much frustration it could have saved us if
yes.
it was there. So
And then just the last thing I have is we're switching EAP companies. So our contract expired with Capital EAP. So I did a little bit of research because we weren't really all that happy with them previously. So I did some research and I did some meetings with people, and we came across ESI, or Total Care EAP is what they're called. And they provide really, really great services. They seem to be much more responsive than Capital EAP was previously. So we decided to go with them. And our contract starts on March 1st with them.
And there wasn't a big price differential?
There was a slight price differential, but I think that how responsive they are is going to make a huge difference. Our employees previously kind of had a hard time getting in touch with the person they really needed to speak with. And the big thing with ESI Total Care is if you are calling, needing, I don't know, any kind of like therapist type help, right? You call and you get a master's level therapist immediately. That's who answers the phone. It's not some sort of triage, where they take your information and say, we'll have somebody call you. And I think in the heat of the moment, if you're really needing somebody to talk to right away, that makes a big difference.
Yeah, that sounds like good.
yeah. And this new provider does seem to have a much, much larger catalog of
Yes.
kind of on-demand training for the mental health kind of issues that our staff might encounter.
We need to act on the contract approval, or is this just for our information?
It's just by way of information.
So you're having trouble recruiting, and do you think this is, I guess you think this is partially due to pay rate?
Yeah, at least for the cleaners, and kind of for the building monitors as well. We were lucky to get some building monitors in, but cleaners, we've had zero luck at all. With the rate of pay and inflation right now, it's been really difficult.
And I think, Ike, you were suggesting that we might need to address that when we do the budget.
In the budgeting process, yeah, I think we should, yes, it's a thing that we need to look closely at.
And have we looked at hiring a cleaning service?
Not, I don't know if Rick has. I haven't spoken to him about that myself.
So no, so the short answer is
No.
Recently, no, we haven't looked at outsourcing. No, we have done in the past, both for maintenance and, for a variety of the building operation sorts of things, for maintenance, security, and cleaning, and have come around to the conclusion that it's better to have kind of control over the staffing and the scheduling and the training, et cetera. But that's not to say that in times of, if there's some difficulty, that I think it's a good suggestion to be looking to see if there is somebody that can do it on a contract base, at least temporarily.
Okay, is there anything else you wanted to point out, Kelly?
Just there's a few that we're still hiring for. So cleaner, obviously, the archivist, which is the full-time civil service position. They're canvassing for that. So we should, I think that goes until next week. So I should have all of the applications by next week. And then the computer clerk, which we just had interviews for last week. We've picked the person, but they have to pass background check and everything. So I'll have the request to appoint on, I think on the next meeting. So those two, the archivist and the computer clerk, have been going very well. Just the cleaner we're kind of stuck on.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then the next thing on the agenda here is the annual report for public and association libraries, which does require board action before we hit the submit button. And I didn't know if you had a chance to look at it or if you had questions about it. I know it's a lot of data. I did talk to you a little bit in my report about some of the nuances of where things may look a little bit strange about the reporting periods.
I had a question.
Yes.
Under section 9, the service outlet info,
Yes.
it says that the school district owns our building, but that the library board owns the land.
That's the way it's
What
actually.
does that mean?
So that means that that's the way it's deeded, actually, is that the land was purchased by the library board. And by virtue of bonding, the school district sold the bonds. And so that's the way school district libraries work.
Okay.
And those are, and that question, actually, because we're a school district library, is not one that we can change the response to.
Right. But we don't actually pay anything for our building to the school district, right? Like
No, that is true now. It wasn't true for a long time. It's true now that the debt service has been retired. But we did because the financing for the building when it was built was through bonds sold by the school district. And so when we were still paying off the debt service, those payments went to the school district.
Okay.
I had a question on the page that was about whether the board had received training.
Oh, yes.
So under Katie's name, there doesn't say that she has received training, and I know she was on the
Yeah.
same session that I was.
Yeah, I fixed that. It's got a Y now and
Oh, okay.
in an updated version. But yes, I did notice that. And then there was some other things to be changed. The dates of the administration and the filing of the oaths of office for Carol and Jean were slightly different by a day or two than are in the version of the report that you're looking at. So Carol actually, and they've been updated in the online form. So Carol took the oath on July 7th and it was filed on July 14th. Jean took the oath on January 12th and it was filed on January 14th. So, and those have been updated.
Good.
Ike, that looks like that was a headache.
Good
for you for getting it done.
Yeah, headache is one word for it. I think I think Jen O had another choice word for it. Did you?
I'm sure you could have a really good time printing it out and leaving it in one of the staff rooms for you to all see really lovely notations.
That's right. So, and just so you're aware of what the process is. So, so what we would be asking is for your approval of it as it's presented, with the potential that there may be updates required. And so what we'll do is we will hit once you've approved it, we'll hit the submit button. Then it goes to Sal's, and there's a poor person at Sal's named Colleen, whose job it is to review these for all 2.5 dozen libraries in Sal's, and get back to the libraries if there are inconsistencies or mistakes that she spots, and then she'll get back to us for the updates that need.
I assume that if there was anything major, you would come to us. So I'm perfectly happy.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And it's definitely a group effort here in terms of gathering the data. So it's not just me. Eric had a big hand in the financial stuff. Eric did the financial reporting this weekend. Catherine and Jen O were very helpful in gathering the data about programs. Jen Ferris, the data about collections and circulation. So it really is a kind of an all hands on deck, and Kelly with the information about staff. It really is an all hands on deck kind of thing. And sometimes guessing all the while.
Yeah.
So
Well, I make a motion that we accept this to go to Sal's as is. And thank you all for working on it.
And I second that. This is Katie.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any
Aye.
opposed? No opposition. That motion carries. I think that's the
it's
just to the end of our public agenda, doesn't it?
It does, yeah.
Okay, I'm going to make.
I just want to ask the budget vote and trustee election is under new business. Do we need to make any further action on that, or?
No, that was just by way of information.
Okay.
So I'm going to move that we go into an executive session to discuss a particular personnel matter and a particular patron matter.
This is
Anybody
Katie.
second
I
that?
second that.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, we're adjourned. We're going into an executive session.
All righty, so Don,